So hi, everybody. My name is Tracy Heilers. I'm founder and executive director of Coalition of Schools Educating Mindfully. I'm here today with an awesome educator and author, Wendy O'Leary, and she's written 2 books so far. And I just heard, we were talking beforehand, she's writing another one too we want to hear about, but Breathing Makes It Better. She co-wrote with Dr Willard. And then her newest is The Monster Parade. Wendy, would you like to start us out with a mindful moment? And then I'd love to start, before we dive into a mini lesson and learning about the book, I want to just I know you have been an educator, and I'm always interested in the story of how you came to mindfulness and, you know, transitioning from an educator into being an author. And now you were telling me about how you've been doing, for many years, doing PDs for schools across the world. Thank you for being here.
It is my pleasure. And thank you so much for inviting me. I love that we have this vehicle of Zoom, right? I was saying earlier that I'm going back to in-person teaching for the first time tomorrow in a long time. And I really miss being in the room with people, and yet the ability to kind of reach more people, I know through video, and that you're recording so that more people can see this, and that we can kind of connect with people from all over in this way. So it's very exciting. So yes, I'd like to start us with a little mindfulness practice. And the practice that I want to do, just to say, is the practice that the book Breathing Makes It Better actually was based on. So it's a nature-based mindfulness practice. So you could just get into a comfortable seated position. And as you're ready, closing your eyes if that works for you, or looking downward, just to limit distractions. And allowing the attention to rest in the body. Bringing the attention to rest with the breath, feeling the breath move through the body. And then you might begin to even visualize a lake, calm, clear, and still. And as you feel the in-breath, saying to yourself, breathing in, I'm a lake. Breathing out, calm and clear. In, lake. Out, calm and clear. And then opening your eyes or looking up to close our brief practice together. So that is a practice that's from Breathing Makes It Better, for those who might be familiar with that book. It's based on the work of Thich Nhat Hanh and his teachings. And Chris and I use that visualization as well as many others throughout that book.
Love it, love it. And how did you come to work with Dr. Willard?
So I had been teaching mindfulness for many years, and I was out and about and I was teaching, and there weren't really a lot of books about mindfulness for children back then. And Chris's book was the one that I always recommended when I was out teaching. And a local organization was bringing him here to do a training. And because I work with so many schools in my area, I kind of pounded the pavement because I wanted to make sure we got a lot of interest so he would come, because I really wanted to hear him speak. So I did that, and he presented, and I am, as you may have noticed tonight, obsessively early. So I was early, and Chris was there. And so we just started chatting, and he had mentioned that he had just had his first child, and he mentioned about like picture books. Again, back then, there weren't a lot of picture books on mindfulness, especially ones that kind of taught it from a mainstream kind of perspective. And so he talked about picture books. And I said, oh, it's funny you say that because I use stories when I teach, um, that I would love to see become books, but I really haven't, sort of done that. And so we chatted a little bit more and I told him my ideas and he asked me to send him what I had. And the next thing you know, he said, well, this one's really similar to an idea I had. And so we kind of joined forces at that point, and Breathing Makes It Better was born.
That's awesome. Yeah, because that has been, it's a classic at this point, I think, as far as, I feel like that is one of the best ways for all people, but younger kids to learn about mindfulness. So thank you so much for writing that. And so I saw you have a master's in education. Were you in the classroom for a lot of years before then? I'm guessing you transitioned.
Actually, no.
Oh no, okay, master's in ed. Oh, you went, yeah, explain all this great stuff. But
So I'll tell you sort of how I got here. The very brief version of how I got here. And so, yes, I have a master's in education, and my interest was really in sort of prevention and looking at what are sort of those kinds of skill sets and capacities that are supportive of well-being and good mental health, right? And so it was really a master's. My focus was in holistic health education. I took a lot of psychology classes as well within that program to supplement it. And so that really was my focus, was less getting into a classroom, but more a real passion around health and wellness. And so from there, I actually was already working in the substance abuse prevention field and doing a lot of programming and work around that. So my work really has been in nonprofits more than in the classroom until I started to do the mindfulness. And the way that I really got hooked on the mindfulness was first and foremost my own practice, right? So I had my own practice. I saw that it was life-changing and how beneficial it had been. And then, in truth, my son was in a yoga club in middle school. And he came home one day and he had all, the different classes. He had his backpack and he put his backpack down and he looked at me and he said, I need to go practice. And he went in the other room and he just sat quietly. And I thought, oh, of course, this can help young people too. And this was probably over 15 years ago. And it was for me that moment where I started to really incline more. I started to read and research and cultivate my own skill set around. It was before there were certifications. It was before there were all these programs out there. But I really felt like this could make a difference in kids' lives. And I was out in nonprofits seeing all the, that quote, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf. Seeing all the waves that children were dealing with and seeing how I could get burnt out trying to get rid of the waves. And so instead I decided I want to give children surfing lessons. And so I really decided that's why I wanted to focus on and cultivate my capacity to teach children mindfulness.
Oh, wonderful. And it is great because I feel learning mindfulness in schools is the best place, because as I'm a yoga instructor, but my kids have always grown up going to hanging out or being the model examples in the classes I've led for kids. And they'd much prefer to hear it from a cool teacher at school than from their mom. So, but the surfing the waves kind of leads into the Monster Parade book, because the waves of emotions come through kind of like the monsters. Or I actually haven't read the book, so I would love to hear a little bit more. We'd love to hear a little bit more about this new book you have.
Yeah, and I am so happy to share. I'm very excited about this book. And in fact, it's based on a practice that I do in the classroom. So I was doing this practice with children. I had, I want to say I think it was two at least classes of kindergartners together in a gymnasium. And I was like, okay, we're at this place where we're in my teaching them that I really want to do something engaging around working with emotions. And I loved this idea of a parade. I used to do a parade game with my children when they were little. They'd parade around the house as different things and as different feelings and notice how it felt in their body. So I was like, I'll do that. And so I did this parade activity with the children. And from there, I always had felt like I feel personally that books are such a great teaching tool. And I thought, oh, it'd be great if there was a book to kind of support this message. And so that's kind of where the book idea came from. But where it fits in my teaching, one of the things that I know I mentioned to you that I would love to talk about is one of the frameworks that I use when I teach is CALM. So when I go out and do certification in professional development programming, I'll talk about calm for children. And calm means the C is for calming the nervous system, noticing we're activated, and then having the skills to calm. The A, so calm, the C, is kind of the breathing makes it better story, right? Breathing makes it better sort of fits within that piece. All the books kind of fit in all of them, but breathing makes it better most neatly fits there. And then I wanted something that was more about the A, acceptance. All feelings welcome. How do we relate to our experience, our moment by moment experience and our feelings? And so that's where the monster parade really fits in my teaching. The monster parade is about the analogy, right, that our emotions are like these monsters that go by in a parade. And we have all these tools at our disposal in terms of how we relate to those monsters. Do we get up close? Can we notice which ones are there most often? Like all these kinds of questions that we can really begin to help children be interested and curious in their emotional experience. And so that's really the premise and where the idea for the monster parade came from. And then the L and the M, the L, let it in with self-compassion, which I know I just shared with you. My third book coming out next year is on self-compassion for children. And then the M, make an adjustment as is helpful, right? So that's addressing the negativity bias and how we can shift our perspective to start to notice the good, take in the good, gratitude practices, things like that. So the monster parade kind of fit neatly with this next step. And it's kind of coincidence that the books fell this way, but it really is supportive of these different aspects of the practice.
Awesome. So the self-compassion for kids. So you've already seen the cover, or because this isn't Monster Parade, is it still pre-order, or is it officially launched?
Launched.
It's launched. Okay.
Launched on 2/22/22.
Oh, that's a good one. Yes, that's a good one.
Yes, so the book on self-compassion is not coming out until 2023, I believe the fall of 2023. And I mentioned to you, Chris Germer very kindly wrote an afterword for that book and has been very supportive. So I was really excited about that. And to me, during the pandemic, especially before, but especially during the pandemic and with all that we've been dealing with, I believe that we can never go wrong with more self-compassion. Like those are the practices that I personally have been leaning into and have been really sharing quite a bit about in my, professional development sessions, trainings, workshops.
Yeah. How young do you, I'm making sure I was off mute. For the self-compassion practices, because we have Lisa Bayless right now doing a 4-week session for educator self-compassion. Like how young do you feel like you can start teaching those types of things? I mean, I would think, have you had experience teaching them to kids already? Maybe you can share about some of those experiences.
Really teaching those practices and any of the practices that I teach, we can start planting those seeds in preschool. In fact, I have pictures of people who are doing monster parade things with children who are little ones. Again, we're kind of planting the seed. We're starting to, and what I love about all of these books is that practice is integrated right into the stories in all of them. I don't really consider myself, I know you talked a little bit about going from being a teacher to an author. I consider myself someone who is a teacher who writes books, right? The books are vehicles for teaching for me. And that's my passion, is sharing these practices. And the books help me to do that more broadly, but they also support me when I go out and teach. And so they grow with the children. The practice is integrated in the story. You can start really young. I teach preschool children. And I was just recently in the Preschool Mindfulness Summit talking about the Monster Parade. And like those practices, self-compassion, as simple as just taking your hand with the child's hand, putting it on their heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
There you go. It's right. There are little ways that we can start to bring these practices to life for children, and we can start really young.
Awesome. Thank you. I wonder if, I know you led us on that short mindful moments to start with, but I'd love to have you lead us in a longer practice, or what would you like how would you like the rest of the session to go? I definitely want to get in another longer practice.
Yeah, so I am taking a look at the time. What I'd love to do is to maybe share about how the messages that are in the Monster Parade a little bit more comprehensively. Like, here are some of the messages, and I know you have a lot of people who are educators, who are super creative people, and so I want to talk about the messages because that supports people to be able to design activities that make sense to you, that work for you, that are ways to share these messages in support of the messages in the book. And then I also would like to share some child-friendly strategies, and we'll play with a few of those. So those will be quick and simple. And then I'd love to end, if that's okay with you, with a longer practice. So does that sound like a...
Yes, that sounds amazing. Yeah, because I know even if they don't buy the Monster Parade book, like you were talking about how you did that field trip, or you were leading things. Yeah, you can lead it even without that. But yeah, all right, go for it.
Don't need the book, and I think that's and the book supports the message, of course. There are activities at the back of the book. Again, all three of my books have that, some practices at the back that you can also use as supportive practices. And also, just to say, and I think this is really important because anything I teach, I do for myself first, right? And so I think probably all your people know this already, but our own practice informs our teaching. And so I do want to share that I actually have a Monster Parade practice for adults. And it is a practice I use all the time. I have found it so helpful to, start to do this practice. How do I see, there's, the sad monster, the disappointed monster, the angry monster. What does it look like? How do I relate to it? Like all the questions. And so there is a guided practice on my YouTube channel specifically for that. And so I encourage people, if you're going to use the Monster Parade, to play with it yourself first. Play with this idea and get to know it. And remember, whenever we're teaching mindfulness, it's always with a gentle touch, right? We meet children where they are, and we meet ourselves where we are, because as we mentioned before, there is a lot going on and things have been hard for a long time. And so erring on the side of kindness and gentleness to ourselves is so, so important, especially when we're getting close to feelings. We don't want to kind of be thrown out of that window of tolerance, right? Where we want to maintain our capacity to be with what is and start to grow that without getting sort of thrown out of that window. So to say some of the concepts that are built in to the book, The Monster Parade, and just, it's on this side. I can't tell which side. The Monster Parade. And so a book about feeling all your feelings and then watching them go. So right there, built into the title, is the first message, right? Feelings come, feelings go. And of course, those of you who've been practicing a while know that one of the things that keeps the feeling from going, the thinking mind, right? It's that whole story we get wrapped up in. But we want to make sure that ways that we teach this and any practices. So again, designing your own, I will share some, but also designing your own that help to support that message, right? That our feelings come and our feelings go. They're passing by. And I think one of the real gems of the Monster Parade is that because they're monsters, right? In the parade, we can disidentify a little bit. gives us just a little space instead of being wrapped up inside our feelings. So it's that whole message of you can have your feelings without your feelings having you. Or as I often will say, they can be on the bus, they can't be in the driver's seat, right? We don't want them in the driver's seat. And so the monster parade, basically the messaging there would be, you don't have to get pulled into the parade with them. So it might be skillful to get to that edge of the sidewalk, even give them a hug on the way by, really getting close and get to know them. Or it may be skillful to get up in the stands and watch them from a little bit more of a distance. And there are skills we can develop to help us do that. So there's the next message, that sense of empowerment, that there are things we can do to help us be able to relate effectively to those monsters as they're going by. And so those might be some of those calming skills, right? When I talked about CALM, some of those skills that help to calm the nervous system can help us from getting pulled in to the parade with the monsters. And so we want to sort of remind children that they have that capacity, and we're building that sense of self-efficacy, right? That they can do it, because just like us, when children kind of feel overwhelmed or thrown out of their window of tolerance, have a tantrum, just like us, when we have a tantrum, it doesn't feel good, right? It feels better. We all know it feels better when we feel like we can handle our big feelings, for us as adults and for the children. So I will say this idea of getting in close and further away is one that I do play with in that guided practice that's on my YouTube channel. And then I also really stress this idea that everyone has them. Whenever I read to children, Breathing Makes It Better or the Monster Parade, I always make sure, because there are always also adults in the room, I'll say, and us grown-ups have these too. We all have all the monsters. Everyone has them. There's nothing wrong with them. So the next message, right? They're not good or bad. Feelings are informative. They're important. They're there for a reason. They're trying to tell us something, and we don't have to act on them, right? We can see them, we can understand them, we can be curious about them. And again, they don't have to be in charge. And then again, in this parade analogy, one of the things that I really like about the parade analogy is, why is something in a parade? It wants your attention, right? So why are they there? Because they want our attention. And so when we avoid our feelings, and this is a piece, I think, of mindfulness that is really misunderstood, when we think that we're practicing to get rid of our feelings or get somewhere else, and in that way, really often what happens is those feelings start acting up. That monster is going to start acting up in other ways, displaced anger, for example. And for those who are parents and listening to this, we kind of have all, my kids are adults now, but I remember the days where somebody would hurt their feelings in school. And what did they do? Stuff it down, stuff it down, stuff it down, until when? They got home. Boom, right? Pops up. And so we want to teach them to be able to be with their feelings skillfully, slowly, gently, and skillfully. And there are within the book also all these different tools for doing that. So those are some of like the general ideas. And as you can see, some of them will play better with littler ones, right? That monster analogy can really work well. But also these are messages I know, like in my adult groups, because I teach pre-K through adult. In my adult groups, some of the adults are working with, right? We're all working with this idea of not getting pulled into the parade, not trying to get rid of, right? I don't like, I had somebody say the other day, oh, I'm feeling really worried. And I've tried all the techniques to get rid of it, right? Or when Breathing Makes It Better first came out, I had a woman who hadn't read the book yet and said, she said, I bought the book, we haven't read it yet. And my children were having a disagreement. And I said to them, hey, breathing makes it better. Take a breath, right? It's not going to work. That's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to stuff it down children's throat, and we are never using it for discipline. Can it help with classroom management? Oh, yes. And that's not the intention. The intention is to support children in understanding and being able to work more effectively with their inner experience. So those are some of the general messages that are in the book. If you have questions, I don't want to, I don't want to like talk over you, but also I'm happy to like start to share some of the strategies, and we can practice along with a couple of them if that works for you. You let me know.
Does anybody have any questions? I'm glad you mentioned that at the end of, that yes, it can help with classroom management, but yeah, because I've had board members and other people say that they maybe they're coaches at their school, and they even, it's hard not to do that, but yeah, there's still a lot of people who that's a temptation.
Yeah, it's so hard. And that idea, I don't know if you ever heard Tara Brach, I believe, once said something like, the minute you are practicing in order to, right? That's when we've sort of lost sight of the practice. And the same with children. And we need to remember too, it's also a practice. We have these neural pathways, these ways of reacting and responding based on physiology, based on life experience, based on genetics, all these things. And if we're trying to support children in sort of expanding that window, that takes practice. And so we want to be sure, I'll just throw in, when I do a full-blown session, I'll talk a little bit about like tips, but you want to be sure you practice when it's not needed, when they're already escalated, when they're out of that window of tolerance. The prefrontal cortex, that reasoning part of the brain, is offline. And we want to make sure that we aren't then trying to give them a skill. So often that's when it comes out as discipline. And I don't know how many of people who are going to be listening to this remember this, but I know I remember this from my childhood. If something happened, right, that an adult was unhappy about in terms of your behavior, they might say, count to 10, like it was a punishment, right? The same with, I remember I shared in a session this morning, my daughter came home from school. She was a real rule follower. She apparently broke a rule, and her teacher said, you have a head down. She had to put her head on the desk, but it was a punishment. Instead of, seems like you're really having a hard time. Is there an angry, like talking about it and then saying, I wonder what might help, right? If you've already taught skills. So we want to teach children to own these practices, not to hate these practices if we're doing it for discipline. I had a teacher who once, I had the mindfulness bell, which I often will use, but I think over Zoom it's harder because you don't know how loud people's things are, mics and all that. But I came in with the bell and she said, oh, I have one of those in my classroom. I whack it when the children are out of control. Right? So I do think that as mindfulness has become more mainstream, it's also often been a little misunderstood. And that's why I'm super excited about the Monster Parade, because I really think that it is really about that acceptance, that piece that people forget about, that we need to welcome the monster, right? Be able to see it, welcome it, and get to know it so that we can work effectively with it. It's there for a reason. So, I'll share some strategies. And I'm sure like your listeners probably know some of these, and you probably know, but I always feel like I appreciate reminders, because I think sometimes I'll do things and I'll be doing one thing for a long time, and then somebody will say something like, oh, I haven't done that practice in a long time. So first are some strategies simply for calming the nervous system, right? So what are those strategies that help us not get pulled into the parade when we can notice our systems activated? And this is for us as adults as well as for children. And so the practice that we did when we started, right? That breathing in, lake, breathing out, calm and clear. And if you want, you can even close your eyes or look down. I always offer options too whenever I teach, particularly in terms of being trauma sensitive in teaching. So eyes closed or looking down, what works for you in this moment. I never correct children when I'm teaching a practice. I want to meet them where they are. So For those of you listening, if you want to close your eyes or look down, and this time let's use the visual of a mountain. Breathing in, I'm a mountain. Breathing out, steady and strong. In, mountain. Out, steady and strong. And so for children, I would usually keep repeating it, right? For cueing. And with adults, I might say it a few times and then let them just continue. And notice how your body feels. When I read Breathing Makes It Better and we get to the mountain part, I might say to them, sit up like a mountain. What does that feel like in your body? You know, as a also certified yoga teacher, I'm very much passionate about how we work the body into our teaching and our practice. We feel our emotions in our body. That's why they're called feelings, right? So we want to make sure we're encouraging children to feel their emotions, get that felt sense of strength and steadiness in the body. And so then there's, of course, belly breathing, which I'm assuming most of you are familiar with, right? So as we breathe in, the belly gets bigger, and as we breathe out, it gets just a little smaller. And when I teach that to children, I'll often say, because with really little ones, they tend to go, right? Like, I don't know if any of you have taught like those really tiny ones, and when they first start doing it, and I'll say, you know, my older students use this when they're nervous about taking tests. They don't really necessarily want everyone to know. We can do it without anybody else noticing, right? Just a gentle, and if they continue to do that, I let it go, right? Just let it go, let them do what they need to do. We're planting. Actually, I often say we're not even planting seeds. We are sprinkling seeds here. So just, especially with the little ones, sprinkle seeds. And then I'll use the breathing ball. So we can do 3 breaths using the breathing ball. So breathing in and out and in and out and in and out. And of course, the benefit of the ball is it's a visual, gives them something else to do, and you can pace it a little bit. And what I always say to children, because I'm sure people are familiar with the breathing ball, so just an added tidbit, I will always say, and you don't need the breathing ball. So if you're out at recess and someone hurts your feelings, you're not going to say, hey, wait a minute, gotta go get my breathing ball, right? But the breathing ball helps us to learn and remember so that when you're out at recess and someone hurts your feelings, what can you do? You can stop and take a breath, right? So from Breathing Makes It Better. So we encourage that idea if we can use some of these tools in that way. And then the last 2 that I'll share are tapping the breath. And, you know, when I started doing the breathing ball back in the day, like no one had the, like not a lot. Now I know everybody. So the kids at first would be like, oh, but now they've all seen them. So tapping the breath, I use with older children. So I wanted to make sure I included something that also works well with older children. Of course, belly breathing does. You don't necessarily need the ball, though even the older children kind of like it. And tapping the breath, similar for those who are teachers who do that tapping when for phonics and for reading, there's a technique called tapping. It's similar, and actually with students in a school that I work with, I was using this technique and they named it. They're like, oh, that's like tapping. So they named it tapping the breath. So quite simply, we just take our hand and I'll say to them, I'm showing you with my hand up here so you can see, but you know what? Again, my high school students, when they're taking tests, will do it with their hand in their lap, right? No one else knows they're doing it. But to learn it, we'll all put our hand, you know, I'll say, but to learn it, let's all put our hands up here just so we can see what we're doing. And so we put our thumb and our first finger together and we take a breath in and out and in and out. And the ring finger in and out, and the pinky in and out. Then I'll say to them, you can also add words or visuals. You could do lake, calm, and clear, right? Or you can just do breathing in, I'm calm, breathing out, I'm clear, right? Or steady and strong. So you can play with it. And one of the things that we know, particularly with children, but even for us as adults, the breath is really subtle. So it helps to add some things. And so this gives our brain a little more to do. So it's not doing what? Right? Which is pulling us into the story, which is escalating the emotion. So it can be really helpful, again, to sort of down regulate our nervous system. And then for little ones, I really love to do bee breath, where we breathe in through the nose and out, just making a gentle hum. And of course, any breath that extends the exhale longer than the inhale calms the nervous system. Again, probably something many of your listeners might know. So it's fun. Like somebody came up with 7-Eleven breathing, right? Somebody came up with that, or Maine, Massachusetts. We do around here. I'm in New England. And any kind of breath, particularly if you breathe in through the nose and out, blowing out through the mouth, that extends the exhale. But bee breath has the added benefit of it's fun, so kids like it. And the vibration is really soothing for the nervous system. So let's do 3 bee breaths, but we're going to do it the way that I like to do it with children, which is I'll say to them, we're going to do the first one, just a regular bee breath, like just the bees hanging up. The second one, let's pretend the bees are angry. They're kind of swarming around. And they love that. And sometimes I'll do 5, so I have a little more time to play with it. But for our purposes today, I'll do 3. And then the last one, let's be sleepy bees. So let's do 3 bee breaths together. Breathing in. And 2. Angry bees. And last one, 3. Sleepy bees. So a lot of times I'll like do 2 of the sleepy bees at the end to make sure we've kind of brought the nervous system back down, but it can be helpful to kind of go up and back down. We want them to kind of feel those differences, to notice the movement in the system when they're kind of a little more activated and a little calmer. And then there are body brace practices that are good for calming. And so I want to share one of my favorites. So a lot of us know like walking meditation, if you're a practitioner yourself, right? We do walking meditation. Feeling your feet on the floor, I know is often used. I think in the Mindful Self-Compassion, they talk about like soles of the feet practice. A lot of meditation teachers talk about feet on the floor. But what I really like to do, particularly if we're sitting, is again adding a little bit more to do, right? So we want to make it less subtle for children. And so I'll do a practice that I call feet seat. So I talk about the attention being like a flashlight, shining the flashlight of attention down. And so we can all do this now, feeling the sensation of your feet on the floor. And now bringing that flashlight up to the backs of the legs and feeling the backs of the legs on the seat. Feet, seat, feet, seat. And then opening your eyes if your eyes are closed. So one of the things about that practice that I really love is that it gives us practice at moving our attention around too. We start to see we have that capacity. Oh, I don't have to obsess about this. I can actually change the channel. It's in the monster parade, right? I can change the channel and, you know, look at a new screen, so to speak. So can we move the attention around? So it's that practice. And I will say for me, feet seat, if I'm feeling activated, that is one of my go-to practices because it's just enough energy and it's also really grounding. So it's a really supportive practice. So there are countless strategies for calming, and probably a lot of you know many of them. With little ones for feet seat, I might even say to them to give them even a more sort of gross sensation. I might have them stomp their feet. So I might say, I'm going to say, feel your feet. When I say feel, we'll stomp one foot. When I say your, we'll stomp the other foot. And then we'll feel our feet. And when they do that, right, there's more sensation there. So it's easier for them to feel it. I also use that as a redirecting practice. If they're standing, I won't do feet seat. I'll just do feel your feet. And the stomp kind of gets their attention, redirects them from whatever they're doing into the feet. It's a grounding practice. Sometimes I'll even say, feel your feet. Then let's take a breath in and out. So we could do that one more time. Feel your feet. Breath in and out. And so practices that start to work more directly with the monsters, naming a feeling, right? So we all know that when we name a feeling, it kind of, it impacts the power that feeling has over us, right? So it can be really helpful, again, to sort of disidentify a little bit. And when we can name it as a monster, right? Oh, that's the angry monster, really supports being able to do that. And we can do lots of kinds of activities around that, right? So we can make puppets, we can make rocks and turn them into the different feeling monsters, right? We can do all kinds of creative things and support children in being able to name their feelings. And the thing I caution about there is to really start to get them to either name it the such and such monster, or I'm noticing anger. I used to do a practice called catch the feeling. Oh, there's anger. Oh, there's sadness. Oh, right. Like, oh, it's just the feeling that's happening right now, kind of like a nonchalant, like, there it is, instead of I am, right? Because when we say, the minute we say I am, there's a real identification. We're hooked in. And so that's, again, why the monster parade analogy really works, because it gives something that we can kind of disidentify and support that. So naming a feeling, and that reminds the children that they are not their feelings. And then the feeling it in the body, which I kind of already talked a little bit about, but I'll say things like, if we do an activity, I might say, what does it feel like when that angry monster's in your parade? Where do you notice it in your body? Might do a visualization. We might make a parade. Let's pretend the angry monster's here. What would that look like? I actually do that parade activity. I'm really careful around reminding them about their bubble. All the monsters in our parade don't touch other monsters in parades. Like I'll set up those parameters and then we'll parade. Or I might put on music and say, okay, we're going to dance around like the angry monsters in the parade, right? We put that on. And when the music stops, freeze as the angry monster, right? So we might do something like that. And then the key here is the monsters can be really fun to work with little ones. Don't forget the point, the intention. So the processing is super important here. What did it feel like? When do you notice that the angry monster shows up? What helps you when the angry monster shows up? What does it need from you? How can you take good care of your angry monster, right? So those are all kinds of supportive ways that we can be creative in working with it. And so I'll just show one, and I actually have a video. It's probably going up on my YouTube soon. It hasn't gone up yet, but of an activity that I do. So I'll just show it really quickly. So this is, can you see it? This is my monster parade. So here is the child, right? So this child, and so here's the message. The child is separate from the feelings, right? Here's the child, here are the emotions, right? So we want to give that message, right? this is you. These are the monsters in the parade. So that's the first message. And then I might ask children, like, what are some of the monsters you notice the most often? And then we'll make this just like little foam things with this, literally the crafty things I had around the house. So we'll make these monsters. And you notice I have a blank one here. And that's to say, sometimes there's a new monster. And so whatever one is there, we can kind of use this one. And then you notice I have this one up here. This is the one that's in the parade right now, but there could be, more than one in the parade at a time. So I have a few little Velcro spots for more than one monster. And then we use this as a conversation, right? Everyone has all these monsters. They're kind of hanging out at the parade starting point, waiting to see if they need to go down the parade route. Do they need our attention? And if they do, we're just going to put them up here, and then, and then they might come back down. And I actually even have a little handout worksheet kind of thing where they can kind of track, okay, when I got here this morning, what parade was in the monster? And then when I got here later, what parade? Again, different feelings come, feelings go. They change throughout the day many, many times. When I go into a classroom, I'll see children's moods change countless times in the half hour I'm in reading a book. So this is one way that you can work with the monster parade. And as I said, I'll be putting up a little bit more about that activity and a couple of others, including a song that I use that goes along with the monster parade. So I think I've been talking at you all for long enough, but I hope at least the practices were supportive a little bit in there. And if whenever you let me know if you have other questions or if other people have questions before I lead, I'd love to end with the practice. So
those were great. Those are great practices. And they got my creativity going too, because like with your feet, I had never done most of those. And then just recently someone led something where it was like noticing your right foot and then noticing your left foot. I was like, oh, I've never done that one either. So there really is, a lot more than just, notice your feet. So it was great to get the creativity going. I also wanted to, when you said to exhale longer for the parasympathetic nervous system, I appreciated how, and I noticed right away when you said, lake, calm and clear, I was like, oh, it's the words we're saying help support that longer exhale. Like, I know what she's doing there. I know the science behind that.
yes.
So, that was great.
And it is, when we do it without trying to do it, that's why some of those breathing practices are great, because they automatically kind of have you do a longer exhale. I know some practices like are counting. I've heard ones for adults, like double your exhale. But it's a lot easier when there's something else that you're doing where you don't have to do that. And it just kind of happens by virtue of the practice. So, that smelling, there's so many hot cocoa breath, like smelling and then blowing off. I actually do happiness soup. That's one of my make an adjustment practices, also on my YouTube. It's a make an adjustment practice where we have the children think of something that makes them happy, feels good, they're peaceful or happy, and then we throw it into the soup pot. I actually bring a soup pot to the school, right? And I stir it up, and then we smell the happiness and we take in everybody's happiness, and then we blow it out. And we send it out to all our classmates. Then we send it out to the whole school. Then we send it out to our neighborhood. We can expand and eventually to all beings everywhere, right? So we're getting two things in there. We're getting this cultivation practice of well-wishing, and we're also getting the cultivation practice of taking in the good. So two cultivation practices and the longer exhale to calm the nervous system in that practice. So that is one of my favorites to do with children. And it's a great practice to kind of do that that make an adjustment, right? And for me, I know when I'm in a grumpy mood, well-wishing is my go-to practice. I drive down the street, may you be happy, may you be happy, may you be happy. I go to the grocery store, may you be happy. And it's amazing to see how that can make a lovely shift in sort of the mind state. So
nice. Thank you. And you know what, we love to have, I know sometimes people who are on this time of night, they're multitasking or they're with their kids as well, but we love to have sharing from people who are joining in with us. So if you had an idea that you're doing in your class that you're having great luck with, that you'd like to share, we'd love to hear it. And then we'll end with Wendy leading us in our practice. Anybody want to be brave?
I have to say, over Zoom, I know myself, I tend to lean back.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
In the chat, with my kiddos, someone's with their kiddos, but they're excited to use the book in classes. And I really love the breathing, breath tapping technique. Yeah. I was thinking maybe you were going to go like the brain,
right.
but yeah.
EFT tapping. No.
Just saying breath tapping, I'm like, that got my creativity going, that there's a lot of different things you could connect with those two. And I know you wanted to do, it was like whoever was able to come to the session, do they get entered into a raffle for one of your books? Or
yes. Yes.
How's that gonna work?
So you can let me know who wins and just send me their contact information. I'll reach out and get to them. That would be
great. Can Cosm support? So we can do 2 books, and we would know who the winners are.
There you go. That would be lovely.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to put, how about lead us through practice? And I'm going to put a little form in the chat box that you can sign up, and we'll get you both a book.
That sounds great. So, and before I do that, I just want to say the tapping technique, that practice I use quite a bit. I used to do one-on-one work, particularly with high school age people who were dealing with a lot of anxiety, test anxiety, things like that. That by far was the favorite technique of like my upper middle and high school students, was the tapping. Again, particularly with anxiety, it gives your system, you want to meet the level of the practice with sort of the level of what's going on. And so it was a really good practice for them. So I'm glad that you found it helpful. And I try and always remember, because of the book, I'm so focused often on the littler ones, and I'm trying to remember when I'm talking to a group that's a little broader, even though we're talking about monsters, which work for adults too. I try to remember to share practices for older. Yeah, high school teacher. And again, the reminder, I do teaching. Feel free to reach out to me also if you have questions. And I have a ton of practices up on YouTube, which is very informal. I'm doing it here in my little office. It's not professionally curated, sort of practice from my home to yours. But feel free to kind of take a look and see if any of those are helpful at all as well. So let's do a little practice to end. So I thought we would do a little self-compassion practice because we're all dealing with so much. And I know I saw somebody is with their children, so maybe you can listen to this again later and do it when you have time to yourself. Beginning by closing your eyes, if that works for you, and looking down, if that's more supportive at this time. Right? We always want to listen to our own inner wisdom. And bringing the attention into the body and resting it with the breath. And now bring to mind someone you know who maybe is having a little bit of a hard time. So not the most difficult situation that you're dealing with, but just enough that might cause a little reactivity for you, so you have something to work with in this practice together. And then the recognition that when someone else is having a hard time, it also affects us. and turning our attention inward to this being right here and noticing how it impacts you. You might ask yourself, what do I need to be able to be with this? To be with this situation, to be present for this individual or individuals. And then I invite you on the in breath to take in what you need. So that could be calm or courage, compassion, acceptance. You don't need the perfect word, but just land on something. And as you breathe in, take that in. And as you breathe out, release and soften. Taking in one for me, kindness, calm, acceptance, and releasing on the exhale. And now bringing that individual back to mind and thinking about what is it that maybe they most need. And if it's working for you at this time, the invitation is to continue to take in what you need on the inhale, and on the exhale, offer them what they most need. Kindness for me, strength for you. Calm and compassion. One for me and one for you. And it's totally okay if right now what's best for you, what's most skillful, is to just continue taking in for yourself and releasing. Or one for me and one for you. And now, as you're ready, opening your eyes or looking up to close this practice together.